You know how sometimes something small happens in your life, even the smallest things, and you catch yourself thinking about someone close to you, someone who has died, and you picture them watching you, and you start giggling at the thought of what their action might have been. I, for example, do this when I attempt to clean windows. And I imagine how my father must have been laughing at the fact that in 42 years, I still haven't managed to learn how to do this. Yes, my father used to be very proud of the fact that he could clean windows perfectly. I do exactly that when something happens here in Malta. I look to the sky and I smile, thinking, what would Daphne have said? And really and truly, I can only find one suitable answer. She would have, more often than not, exclaimed, Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Let's look back at the last 12 months and analyze just a few things Prime Minister Roberto Abela said and a few other where he had nothing to say, when he clearly should have said something. Abela declared, I do not communicate with Kitch Cambry. Well, in the first place, we were told that Kitch Cambry had lost his mobile phone. So in theory, that would make it difficult for the Prime Minister to communicate with him, right? But let's assume that Kitch Cambry, the most corrupt chief of staff in Malta's history, had brought himself a brand new phone. Why on earth would the new Prime Minister feel the need to make such a statement? Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Abela told us, I accept the resignation of Lawrence Kutaya. For those who need reminding, the ex-police commissioner, Lawrence Kutaya, who was also the fifth one under the Labour government since 2013, established his reputation both before Daphne Caruana's brutal murder and, more particularly, after, for doing absolutely nothing and allegedly protecting criminals. For the weeks, months, years that followed that dark day on the 16th October 2017, CSN, Occupy Justice, Graffiti Republica, and many other civil society organizations called for Kutaya's resignation. Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Did you have to wait for him to resign? You should have sacked him on the very day that you were elected leader of the country. Abela also boasted, I have given instruction not to clear Daphne Caruana Galicia's memorial. We've already tried to explain this to you, but it seems that I need to point this out one more time. It was the courts that ordered the government not to clear the memorial anymore. You have done nothing. You did not even address the fact that one of your current ministers, Owen Bonici, the ex-minister of Injustice, was in fact breaching the protesters' basic human rights. Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Abela announced Justin Caruana's resignation set government ethical benchmark. Really? The same minister, Justin Caruana, who claimed to be unaware of the travel arrangements of her then husband, the same minister who, when still living under the same roof as Silvio Valletta, said she did not know that he was holidaying with Jürgen Fenech. She resigned. But what a joke. You reinstated her as a minister at the first opportunity. And that's what we call throwing the ethical benchmark to the dogs. Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Another gem from Abela. We are in government, so we take the decisions. The only decisions that you seem to take are the ones that go against the advice of Moneville, against the advice of the Council of Europe, and unluckily for us all, against the advice of the health authorities. Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. Abela also revealed the plan for the future is to go back to full democracy, which goes to show that we do not have one, really. Was cutting short the public inquiry part of the plan? Was firing a government public health advisor for speaking the truth to educators part of that plan too? Int bissejjed Prim Ministru. And then there was the infamous il-mewġ fil-bararjat. You certainly know something about that. Sailing off to Sicily on your luxury cruiser, weekend after weekend, while people here were struggling with reduced wages or facing unemployment. Imagine if we all behaved like you during a pandemic. Int bissejjeta Prim Ministru. And if that were not enough, Abela also predicted Malta's avoidance of a strict lockdown throughout the COVID-19 pandemic will make the island more attractive to foreign investors. An utterly insensitive comment, if ever there was one. Our very own Prime Minister disregarding the feelings of the families and friends of the hundreds of people who sadly died after contracting COVID-19. Imagine how they must have felt on hearing this. Int bissejjeta Prim Ministru. And then there were the issues you did not comment about, the ones we are still waiting for you to address, Prime Minister. You haven't said a word about Junior Minister taking 46,500 in cash passed on to her underneath the restaurant table. You haven't commented on the ridiculous statement that it was a broker's fee at the promise of sale stage before the sale is concluded, which is unheard of. You haven't said anything about Ian Borge being called a liar by the courts after he exploited an elderly man so as to acquire his land for a pittance. You haven't issued a warning to the minister, or at the very least, instead, that he makes a public apology. There's been nothing but silence from you. And how about giving us your thoughts about your Justice Minister, Edward Zamet-Lewis, who refuses to publish any proof that would contradict claims that he stayed free of charge at Jürgens Fenech Hilton Hotel in Evian-les-Bains, France? Nothing to say about this, it seems. Meanwhile, day after day, month after month, year after year, we are left with only the possibility of looking to the sky and guessing what Daphne Caruana Galizia would have thought, written, or said about your style of leadership. I think I know what she would have had to say. Int bissejjeta Prim Ministru.